What do you think of when I say leech? Well, I think of a parasite sucking up all of the blood resources of its host without giving anything in return. And I also think that that is the perfect way to describe Europe's NATO relationship with the US, sucking up all of our American taxpayer dollars to fund their own military protection, whilst they not only not give us any help in return, but actively work against us. I think that President Trump put it best here. Play this clip.
Mostly. Okay, so we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year. You know, the case could be made that we spent all of the money over the years before me. I cut it back. But listen, we spend all of this money, and then when we want to maybe have help on small stuff, this is small time. This is not the big one. This is small potatoes. They say no, would rather not help.
So what he's referring to, what President Trump is referring to here, is the fact that before he took office, each year, the US was giving NATO $950 million, nearly $1 billion each year for the NATO Common Fund. This is $900 million of our money. And when I say our money, I literally mean our money, because it's US taxpayer money that we were handing out to NATO to help fund their own defense. And the craziest thing about this is that the United States is 1 out of 32 NATO members. 1 out of 32. Some quick math here that says that's about 3%. Okay, so we should be each year contributing 3% of NATO's total defense fund, correct? So 950 million should be 3%. But no, according to NATO's own statistics, the United States contributes 14.9%. So we, the American taxpayers, the American government, we are contributing 5 times what we should be contributing, what other countries should be contributing. 5 times 3%, 15% to NATO every single year to fund their defense. This doesn't even really benefit us because we're all the way over here in America. Well, this is mostly for Europe's defense against enemies like Russia. And on top of that, our defense spending each year, let me show you this graphic here. Our defense spending, look at this. Each year we spend, this is from 2023, we spend $860 billion on defense, okay? And we make up around 60% of total NATO spending. That means that every single other country inside of NATO, all 31 countries added up, if you add up all of their defense spending, it is still less than the United States. We account for around 60% of the total amount of money that NATO countries spend on their defense. Look at this chart here. It really just puts it into perspective here. This is in 2021, right after Donald Trump left office for the first term. Look at this. Look at that. And this is only 3.5% of our GDP, which is still more than most of the other countries here, which are below 2%. 2%, if you remember, is NATO's target goal for every single member. Every single member should be spending at least 2% on their own defense. And while we're spending all of this money, do they at least thank us? Do they at least show some form of appreciation? Do they at least help us when we're in need? Well, no. Not on the Iran war, at least not when we're asking for it. Let's listen to this Trump clip here.
I was disappointed with Italy. I was disappointed with the UK. He's now gone. And, you know, he had a lot of problems, but we were disappointed with the UK. We were disappointed with Germany and France. We were let down. We didn't need help on this at all. We demolished them in literally the first week. But it would have been nice if they would have said, we'd like to help.
He's referring to Iran over here. If you remember, during the initial stages of the war, the US was doing great. We were striking all of our military targets. And then we asked some countries, Spain, I believe Italy, he mentioned also the United Kingdom. We asked them, hey, we got all these military bases. The US has been funding all of these military bases within Europe, within your countries for the past 70, 80 years. Is it okay if we use them to launch some strike ships to launch some bombers off of those bases so that we can strike Iran since you're closer. And instead of saying, yeah, sure, you were funding our defense for all these years, this is the least we can do. These are your bases, after all, that you funded. They said no. They closed it down. They said, we're not doing that. We're not letting you do this. And besides the Iran war, which was, like Trump said, it was small potatoes. It wasn't even a big deal. We just wanted some help, a little bit of help. We would have been fine without. They work against us in every single other industry. I mean, there is this report by CNBC that over the last 2 years within the Trump administration, since Trump took office, this was reported in 2026, the EU has fined US big tech over $7 billion. This doesn't even account for all the weird fines that they've given to us over the past decade. $7 billion against US big tech companies over the past 2 years. So while we're giving them all this military protection, they're actually hitting us back in terms of trade. They're not helping us at all. They're working against us. And there's a very, very funny meme going around that, America builds it and then Europe bans it. And I think that that perfectly captures our relationship with Europe. And for some reason, over the past 70 years, we've always been scared to stand up to them. We've always tried to just say, oh, yeah, it's okay. We'll give you all this money. Sure, you can hit back at us. Yeah, yeah. We've always treated them like a little brother that we have to take care of for whatever reason, at the severe detriment of our American taxpayer dollars and our American companies. That is until Trump took office and he said enough is enough. And for the first time since Eisenhower, I believe Eisenhower created the modern version of NATO, Trump threatened to pull the US out of Europe unless Europe started to pull its own weight. And I don't remember if you guys remember, but when he was first saying this, Europe braces for Trump's wrath. When he was first saying this when he took office, I think back in even 2016, he was saying this a little bit. Europe kind of scoffed at us. They were saying, yeah, sure, Trump, you don't have the power to do that. You're not going to do that. You're too scared to do that. They thought they were kind of entitled to that US aid and that it would continuously come. And Trump said, well, watch us. Watch what we're going to do next. And Europe very quickly realized that Trump isn't bluffing. Trump doesn't bluff when it comes to this. And then during that time, they saw Russia coming on the horizon. Russia started doing things in Crimea, doing things in Ukraine, and Russia started getting more and more aggressive, and Europe was getting a little panicky. They were saying, oh no, we're going to need US aid soon. We might have to sucker up to Trump a little bit. We're going to need his help soon, while he's saying that he's going to pull all this away from us if we don't start pulling our weight. And then Trump, this term, actually started following through on his promises. He pulled 5,000 troops out of Germany. This is here. U.S. forces have confirmed their withdrawal from Germany. The first batch of 5,000 American troops. We're witnessing the collapse of the NATO alliance. This is the beginning of the end. Although some of these troops were later rotated to Poland after Poland made some concessions. I believe that Poland now is one of the largest contributors to NATO also in terms of GDP, in terms of percentages of their GDP. But yeah, we're pulling troops out of NATO, out of Europe. And this is when Europe finally wakes up. They realize, no, Trump isn't bluffing at all. In fact, he's acting on his promises. And all of a sudden, they're reversing course. They're trying to make back for the 70 years of free aid that we've given them. They're trying to appease Trump. And listen to what the NATO secretary says here. Secretary General of NATO says here during a meeting with Trump in the Oval Office. He starts running up. He gets up, runs up, and starts doing a presentation to try to tell Trump how much they've been doing.
Because I want to show you what this president was able to achieve. And I start with this chart. This chart is about the Trump trillion. The Trump trillion shows you the increase Europeans and Canadians are paying into defense since you took office in 2017. Right. Trump 45 plus Trump 47. A total of extra spent by the Europeans and the Canadians of 1.2 trillion.
The Trump trillion, as he's calling it. And this is actually just NATO finally meeting its promised goals. Yeah, Trump pushed them to do it. That's why he's coining the Trump trillion. But I mean, Trump just pushing NATO to do what they agreed to do this entire time. The NATO strategy says every country must spend 2% of their GDP on defense. That's what NATO sets out for its own members. That's not us saying it, it's NATO saying it. And they finally hit that goal, I believe, just like within the past year, or maybe even this year. Since Trump took office, every country has increased their spending for a combined total of $1 trillion. And while that may sound like a lot, it's actually not that much, because what he did here was that he divided up the chart within per year and then added them all together. So it's really not that much of an increase, and 2% is still relatively small for their GDP compared to the GDP. Trump would like to see some of these countries at around 5% or even higher, and it looks like that these countries, these Europe, for their credit, they are actively trying to get there. They are finally taking the burden off of the United States, off of American taxpayers, and looks like that Trump is the first president in 70 years to force Europe to do so. And that's all I have for you guys today. Make sure to comment down below what you think of the US-NATO alliance. Is it still worth it? Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys here again later.